Okay, so if you follow me on my socials, like Instagram, you would have seen some updates for the past couple of weeks from a current client, Chris. So I'll show you what it looked like on day one with these photos here. So you can see his posture is very kicked out, kind of kicked out to his right side. So his posture is all kind of buckled. He can't really hold himself upright or anywhere near upright. Obviously a lot of pain trying to stand up, and then when we try and get him to walk, you can see his gait is very laboured, but also very painful for him to walk more than even a few steps. And then 9 weeks later, this is his posture now. So you can see he's almost bolt upright, the perfect posture. And then as he walks, obviously you can see now, almost, got a much more normal, almost perfect gait coming back again. Still got some work to do, a little bit kind of lumpy and laboured in some places, but it's worlds better than it was when we first started. So again, 9-week progress. So what was the magical things that we did that has generated this miraculous progression in his rehab? Well, there is no miracles, there is no magic, unfortunately. However, what we can do, if you watched my last video, if you understand the idea of how you structure a genuine, long-term successful plan for back rehab, you understand the concept of structure of a pyramid, and that base level of the pyramid, what we call, I'll call it investigation or aggravators, is basically just understanding that person's problem clearly so that we can then begin to pick the right tools to solve that particular problem. What most rehab plans do is they kind of treat back pain as a bit of a catch-all term and just kind of throw random spaghetti at the wall to kind of, in the hopes of seeing what sticks. But it's a very generic approach that kind of, they do the same thing with each person that they treat. So the downside is with that is half the time you end up wasting all this time because you've got things that are not effective. The other half of the time you might even inadvertently do stuff that makes them a lot worse. So I'll give you an example with Chris. So he's very buckled over. Always has trouble walking. We know he's got some serious glute dysfunction. Got some pain down one of his legs. So be very quick to assume, perhaps he's got like a sciatica from a disc bulge or a herniation, something like that. No, he has got some irritation, sciatic-like pain, because almost the opposite to that, he's got like a pars fracture, and he's getting a bit of like stenotic type sciatica into his leg, which is affecting his glute function. And that behaves differently to a disc bulge. For example, for a disc bulge, we know if you have excessive flexion, but like the jam on a jam donut, you squeeze it out and that makes that bulge worse. So one of the things we can do in some of those cases is we can restore passive extension with something like a McKenzie approach or even disc recovery approach, where we put people into varying degrees of extension to kind of pull that bulge back in and restore extension to his spine. For Chris's case, because he's got a pars fracture, he's had far too much excessive faulty extension, which has damaged that bone and caused it to fracture. It's like having a credit card and you keep bending it, eventually it's going to go and snap. That's what's basically happened to that particular bone in his spine, because he's been trying to force and drive extension from his lumbar spine. It hasn't come from his hips. So again, if we gave him, with the best intentions, you might say, this worked for the last client, let's give him some passive extension. That would make him significantly worse, but like the worst thing you can give him. Because ironically for him, if you put him into flexion, i.e. slightly rounded spine, it would actually feel better because it would push that pars fracture back together again. It would make him feel a bit more secure and a bit more settled. So for him, we can't use that passive extension. What we need to do is change the way that he drives his extension by trying to get his glutes online. And again, that in turn will give him the ability to stand up straight, take that strain away from that spinal joint, and also give him the ability to walk, which has helped. As his glutes have got stronger, we can add more stuff around the core, more exercises, target other places of the core, and add more layers of armour. But it really began, the biggest thing for him was trying to get those glutes at least somewhat functional first of all, so that we could start to build around them. Because without that glute function for him, everything falls to pieces, and again, he'd just start to try to drive extension of his lumbar spine again and make his problems far worse. The point of all this is, again, there is nothing magical with back pain, especially if you're trying to look for an actual genuine solution. the best we have is to have a structure that where we can, before we start to select the tools, we spend a good deal of time investigating and understanding the actual problem at hand. Once we understand the problem at hand, then we can start to propose exercises, solutions, treatments, and all the other things going forward. But we must investigate the problem first of all, and that's exactly what we did with Chris. Is we ran some mechanical tests with him, I tested him to see what his muscles are up to and what they've done to try and solve that problem. And then from that information and understanding what his aggravators are, what his pain triggers are day to day, what are the things that make him feel worse, that gives us the rules of the game that then shape what we can and also most importantly can't do going forward for him to get him on the right track and obviously stop him from flaring up his injury. So again, really important if you want genuine long-term success with back pain, you follow that pyramid structure and you pay heed to that fundamental first layer of investigation and understanding your problem first of all. Because if you don't understand your problem, you're not genuinely going to solve it long term, and again you risk doing things that will make it worse even with the best intentions. So again, for a genuine long-term solution to back pain, follow that pyramid structure, spend some time initially investigating that problem, understand what causes the pain, why is the pain there, what's caused the injury that's there, and from there we can then start to build forward and get people onto the right track. So again, genuine long-term success for back pain, nothing magical, just methodical.